You know, it's kind of funny. Since the beginning of Wano, we've seen more and more mythical zones be revealed in the story, and it just makes me harken back to the line Kizaru said at Marineford, where he was fighting Marco, and he paused back and was like, mythical zones, the rarest of all fruits, even more rarer than Logias. But since Act 1 of Wano, we've had at least two mythical zones per arc. If you just skip Egghead, you probably have none. But throughout it, it's got me thinking, okay, what are the strongest mythical zone fruits in the story? And so that got me thinking, okay, let me sit down here and make a list on what are the strongest mythical zone fruits. And full disclosure for this video, I am not talking about the Gorosei's fruits. We're just gonna throw them into the bin right now. We don't even know if there are dual fruits, considering the fact with the most recent chapter in 1179, we see Lord Emu show up, and yeah, I'm not gonna touch that. Be like, nope, we're gonna leave that alone for now. So for now, let's just sit down and list the strongest mythical zone fruits in this video. All right, just from number 12 to number 1. All right, the 12 strongest mythical zone fruits. All right, so at number 12, the bottom fruit, we have the Cerebus fruit. All right. We see this in after Loki's introduction with Shamrock. It's in Shamrock's sword, so think of it just like Spondum's elephant sword. It's a Delphi Data sword. We don't know the model or type of it, but it's, unless something, borrowing some word play on Oda's part, it's Dog Fruit, Mythical Zone model Cerberus, or Inu no Mi model Cerebus. So this fruit basically takes the form of a three-headed dog. If you've ever read anything on Greek mythology, you know what a Cerebus is. It's basically the three-headed hellhound that it basically is Hades' favorite dog, and Hercules has to go take out of the underworld on his adventures. But with this Cerebus zone fruit, basically, it can detach itself and its heads and shoot out blades and just repeatedly stab you multiple times, just getting it all in there. All right, and it's just this bizarre spinning points, like jet repulsion in some ways, and they just kind of have and like with all zone fruits, this one particularly showcases how they all have a will of their own. They're not really intelligible. They're just there. They have the will of their own. They're just doing things on instinct. All right, and the technique is scramble. Shamrock takes his sword out and he just shoots it, and then it just goes out and does it. All right, it's extremely powerful. I mean, granted, the fact that Loki was chained up with sea stone and he couldn't move, so still, this thing basically left him to bleed out and die. If Luffy and company hadn't showed up, Loki would have bled out and died, most likely, or just frozen to death. So we don't really see a whole lot of it. But again, this is the weakest mythical zone. We just don't know much about it. And maybe if it was used by a human, maybe it would have had more abilities or some special powers we haven't seen yet, but that's what it is. All right, so that's number 12. Number 11, we have the Hito no Mi model Onyoro. Now this is the one mythical zone that just caught me out of left field, because I had no idea this was one until Oda revealed it in SBS. Yuki's Onimaru, the fox from Ringo and Wano, ate a human fruit model Onyoro. Now, this is basically gave me Chopper vibes, where we were coming to the conclusion. It was like, wait, you're telling me that another animal ate a human fruit model? Okay, fine, just roll with it. We'll take it for what it is. And so this was eaten by Onimaru, and what this essentially does is turn a animal, or in this case a person if they were to eat it, into an Onyoro, which is basically a yokai warrior monk that basically harvests weapons. And you have your own personal Naginata. You are essentially able also, if this was eaten by an animal, they also have the ability to understand human thought and intelligence. They're able to speak. Onimaru is able to effectively also understand things even in his animal form, which is a little different from Chopper, because Chopper ate the human fruit, but even in his normal reindeer form, he's still able to understand the thoughts and able to communicate effectively with other humans. So yeah, this is it. And in some myths, the Onyoro is sometimes a shape-shifting fox, which we will get into real quick. And so yeah, like other human fruits, if this was eaten by an animal, it would give them intelligible thought and understanding. And the Onyoro fruit is no pushover. The fact that he was kind of able to hold his own against Zoro and Killer for a little bit, even though Zoro was distracted, shows that this fruit isn't completely useless. And if Onimaru had spent more time fighting or had learned hockey, could have been a much more capable fighter. But yeah, this is essentially, it gives you the same physical boost that all zone fruits do, but in this case you turn into a big hulking monk that collects weapons. And yeah, that's number 11. All right, so All right, number 10, we have the Uma Uma no Mi model Pegasus. Now, when I first saw this in Egghead, when we were seeing Blackbeard and Lost Crew, I first thought, oh crap, did the Blackbeard pirates actually go to Skypiea and take Pell the bird who could turn into a Pegasus? I was like, oh no, did they kill Pell? But then I was like, no, wait, no, I remember now. Pell was just a normal bird that ate a normal horse fruit. So his transformation is going to look a little different because he's half bird, half horse, half Pegasus. So thus you get the Pegasus, all right? And in case it's stronger, the horse on Blackbeard's crew, who's written by Doc Q, he ate just the standard horse fruit model Pegasus. And this is basically used for transportation, and it's kind of funny to me that he is a horse that ate a horse fruit. And from what we've seen, that's the only two we've seen, two versions of the horse fruit. Well, actually, no, I take it. But yeah, two versions of horse fruit, and they've both been eaten by animals. One a bird that turns into a Pegasus in its hybrid form, and another one that turns into a Pegasus in its full-on animal form. I have no idea what other special abilities the Pegasus fruit has. Maybe it can shoot out metal from its wings or fire off some kind of laser blast. I have no idea what the Pegasus fruit can do, but assuming the fact that Stronger was carrying both Doc Q and Teach's big ass on him while he was being attacked, meaning the fruit gives you some kind of speed and mobility that we just typically don't see. And we're going to assume it also increases its defenses, but again, we just haven't seen enough of this fruit to gauge all of its powers and abilities. Now, in my head canon, when I think of Pegasus, I think of obviously like Greek mythology, Hercules and his Pegasus, and just take that for what you will. So again, this is one fruit we just don't typically see a lot of. We've only seen it used by one person, in this case a horse, so we'll see what happens from here, but we don't know. All right. The number 9 entry on this list is Orochi's. Well, he's dead now, so I guess it's in circulation. So best luck to whoever has it next is the Hebehebi no Mi Yamato no Orochi. So a little backstory on this fruit. In Japanese mythology, the Yamato no Orochi is a serpent that is basically just gobbling up people's families. And so this one farming couple beseech the storm god Susanoo to save their daughter. In exchange, he can marry her. So what Susanoo does in his quest for redemption after being thrown out by his dad and traveling the earth, basically is like, okay, I'm going to get all these jars of sake, and then I'm going to dunk its head in there, and then I'm going to chop off each one of those heads, and through that's how you also get the Totsuka blade, which he gave to his sister as an apology for kind of like, traumatizing her with a dead horse, family drama, who cares? And so, yeah, that's a little backstory on that fruit. But the Yamato no Orochi was eaten by Orochi, and I'm of the opinion that this fruit would have been better in anybody's hands but Orochi's, because the guy's A, an idiot, and B, he's just not very skilled in how he fights, just not at all. He's just completely useless, just nothing redeemable about him. And so when we see Orochi, he's basically just slithering around, and he doesn't really fight. He just banks his head back and forth. He just smashes shit. And when we see Orochi, we're just like, okay, what's the special ability? And in the beginning of the raid on Onigashima, Kaido basically takes out a katana and chops his head off. And, we were all like, yeah, Orochi's dead. And we're like, wait, that's it? But then a lot of people suspected, and this was true of the case, that Orochi's fruit lets him come back 8 times. Now, in a normal person's skilled hand, having 8 lives gives you a huge edge. Just 8 lives. You can come back 8 times, and all you have to do is basically not be a dumbass and just be like, okay, protect myself. But because Orochi is just a complete idiot and really just an inept fighter with no use of haki, observation, any of that, he just gets dog walked by everybody. So it's just like, okay, so you're telling me you've got this awesome fruit power and you die 8 times. All you have to do is not die. And maybe if he was more skilled, maybe he was stronger. But again, because he's just Orochi and he's just an idiot and he's just completely inept, this fruit is just only basically, it served as the excuse for every one of Odin's vassals, all of the 9 red scabbers, to basically just take their shots at Orochi and be like, you get ahead, and you get ahead, and you get ahead. And everybody just watching him slowly burn to death in his final life, where he already developed the epic line saying, Korozumi means charcoal, and you, Orochi, were born to burn. So burn, baby, burn. So yeah, that's the name of that fruit. Just, again, this is one of those fruits that it would have been better off in hands of anybody more skillful, but we just don't know what it would have looked like if somebody was actually competent and knew what the fuck they were doing with this devil fruit. But We don't. We got Orochi. Next up, we have the Inu Inu no Mi Mado Kyubi Kitsune. Now, if you're like me and you think Nine-Tailed Fox, you think of Naruto first comes to your mind. Now, the Japanese mythology, where that comes from. But yeah, the Inu Inu no Mi Mado Kyubi Kitsune was in by Katsurina Devon, which, tangent on her, Katsurina Devon, one of Blackbeard's commanders. Her hobby, before she was arrested and thrown to prison and impaled down, was going around seeing women who were more beautiful than her and taking their heads as literal trophies and keeping them on a shelf in her room. So, in case you ever wonder who she's going to fight in the final battle against Luffy's crew and Blackbeard's crew, which, come on, we all know that's going to happen. They're basically mirror images. When she sees Nami and or Robin, she's immediately going to be like, oh, no, those pretty girls, no, they gotta go. I'm making their heads as my trophies. I mean, she even joked about it with Hancock during Egghead, so take that for what you will. And from what I've seen with this fruit, this is basically the upgraded version of what the Mani Mani no Mi does. It can let you shapeshift into any person, but there are two differences I've seen so far. Number one, with the Mani Mani no Mi, you have to touch the person's face. You gotta touch them right here, and you can transform into them. Katrina, from what I've seen, doesn't need to do that. She just needs to touch your body. Secondly, and this is the biggest thing, shape-shifting clothes. If you think me, obviously you think of Naruto transformation jutsu. You know that if you use the Mani Mani powers, you only change the physical appearance. You still wear the same clothes you wore before. So if you're going to do some clever infiltration or sabotage, then you need to have the same outfit. Otherwise, you'll just stick out like a sore thumb. The second, and so that's like the first two differences are non-physical touch with the head, and you can actually transform your clothes, wear whatever they're wearing or what you saw them wearing last or something like that. All right. And so for those of you who don't know Japanese mythology, the Kitsune, the Kyubi Kitsune, was a trickster spirit that would transform into a beautiful woman and go around night having mischief and causing all kinds of fun. So again, it kind of links to Katrina's whole obsession about, taking the heads of beautiful women and keeping them as trophies. Just it all links back to there, and just we don't know much about this fruit beyond the fact that it's great at infiltration and manipulating events and tricking your people. We saw it during the intermission of Act 1 and Act 2 of Wano, where Katarina pretended to be Absalom, who, Gekamori was looking for his crew, and he's like, oh, Absalom, it's you. And from what I've seen, this fruit also gives you the ability to copy their mannerisms perfectly, as well as their personality and memory. So maybe with the access to the Kitsune fruit, you're able to just, grab their body and then or see them, and you're instantly able to transform into them and get a better sense for who they are. Or you could be like one of those things where if you touch them, you gain access to all their memories. But if you see them, you could transform into them and you gain all their personalities. It, like other Zoan fruits, increases your strength, speed, all of those abilities. We haven't seen all of it. We just scratched surface with Katarina during Act 1 and Act 2 intermission of Wano, so we'll see more what she does. But from everything I've seen, Katarina's fruit is kind of terrifying in the wrong hands, and considering the fact that she, towards the end of Egghead, copied Saturn, who, R.I.P., actually, no, screw Saturn, he's a dick, he can rot in hell for all I care. She now has access to all his transformation, and that could be disastrous if, say, you wanted to infiltrate the Holy Land and do some damage. Like, again, not something I'd want to see. All right, so now that we've done all the weaker ones and the ones with quirky abilities, now we're getting into the heavy hitters. All right, we're now getting into the heavy hitter ones. All right, up next we have the Ryo no Mi Mado Kirin. All right, now this is one of the newer ones we've seen since Elbaf. We've seen exactly 3 in Elbaf: the Cerebus, Kirin, and the Nidhogg fruit, which we'll get to. And so this fruit was eaten by one Killingham, or I can't even pronounce his full name, his first name, Rishimufi Killingham. All right, just Killingham for sure. I'm just gonna call him that. I can't pronounce these names sometimes, sorry. So Killingham ate the Ryo Mado Kirin. All right, and if you're like me, again, I'm referencing Naruto a lot because I was just like the first anime that I experienced that did a lot of Japanese mythology. Kirin, all right. And so, the Kirin, essentially, think of a Kirin as sort of like a chimera, a hybrid. It's got like horse body, it's got horse legs, a dragon's head, And so yeah, there it's Chinese. It's a hoofed animal. It's got a goat, ox, deer, horse kind of element to it with the scales of a Chinese dragon. And ironically, this is the only dragon fruit, well, outside of the final one we'll see, that actually just turned into a dragon. It was the first one, because the first dragon fruit, all dragon fruits we've seen are dinosaurs, like dragon fruit model, Tyrannosaurus rat, what is freaking Queen's devil fruit, the long neck, or freaking Kings, which is a Trachodon, or even, I'm trying to think who else. What is Drake's devil fruit? Drake, doesn't matter. Tangent offside. So then we have those fruits, all right? This is the first one that lets you turn into an actual dragon that we saw a dragon fruit model Kieran, all right? Now with this fruit, you get the same abilities. You have pretty much the upgraded strength and speed. Killingham is an awakened user. He's got the little ribbon and everything on his back. And so he can transform into his hybrid and full animal form. And with it, he has like the little dragon whiskers. He's got all the transformation abilities that you would want. But this is the main thing about main power of the Kieran fruit, all right? It lets you turn you into a dream human. Now, this is one of the more fruits that where you can do some serious damage in the wrong hands, as you've seen in Elbath. With access to the Kieran fruit, you're able to put people to sleep, although how long that is depends on how much power, as well as the strength of the person and hockey, so there's no guarantee there. But you're also able to manifest their dreams. Now, what does that mean? Well, for starters, you say, for example, you are dreaming about pizza. Killingham can go into your dream and create that pizza. Or say, for example, you're eating some food and you want some salt on it. Well, he can put you to sleep and you can dream about the salt. Now, the problem when Killingham does those, manifest those dreams, like the food, they're not nutritious. They're not actually fulfilling your body. They taste good, but they're not fulfilling. Think of it as like basically a Ozempic but dream. Think of it like that, all right? You have a way to solve whatever. If you're hungry and you want some food, but you don't want to pull any weight, you can just call Killingham. Okay, could you manifest me some cupcakes? Just give me some cupcakes. I'm good. And so with Killingham's fruit, he just manifests whatever's in your dream, and that's it. Now, that's bad. That is one of the weaker ways he does it. The main way Killingham does it is he puts people to sleep, and then he can manifest their nightmares. All right, he can summon what essentially comes down to dream manifesting monsters, okay? And what this does is he can take out your nightmares, your worst fears out of your dreams and bring it to life. If, say, for example, you're afraid of dogs, he'll manifest it. Say, for example, you're afraid of bees, he can manifest a big-ass bee. Killingham's fruit in the wrong hands can do major damage, and especially with the fact that he can put you to sleep, and waking somebody up out of it isn't easy. From what we've seen, it's going to require either a lot of pain or a burst of hockey to just wake people up, and Killingham can manifest those fears and dreams into reality, all right? Now, manifesting these summoned dream monsters are bad enough, but the main thing with them is that they have a hard time staying down. Killingham can just keep respawning them. Now, obviously, like Devil Fruits, he's got a stamina limit on how much he can push out and how much he can do. But with access to this fruit, Killingham can effectively keep an army of dream monsters going 24/7. Now, obviously, like any Devil Fruit, he's got a stamina limit. He's got how much damage he can take. But still, this fruit is a nightmare to deal with in the literal sense and figurative sense, that it basically brought Elbath to its knees and was just a headache for people to deal with. It took the combination of Luffy and Loki's powers to basically just neutralize the dream threats and put them on ice. All right, next up, we have the Ini Ina no Mi Okuchi no Makami, all right? Or the dog fruit model, all right? Ochi no Makami, or big mouth dog, all right? Now, this devil fruit was eaten by Yamato, Kaido's son, and this devil fruit was seen as the guardian deity of Wano. All right, we first see Yamato attempt to using it during their battle against Sasuke, when the fangs started up here, and you see like the little angry and everything. But this fruit, it was eaten by Yamato, and this fruit's pretty much just basically one level below like the durability and offensive powers of Kaido's Azure Dragon fruit, because when Yamato ate it, just basically able to go toe-to-toe with Kaido. So some background on it: in Japanese mythology, the Yamato province, where Yamato's named after, had worshipped a guardian wolf deity that basically understood human language and protected humans. It also protects things from fire, misfortune, theft, all right? And also the fact that in that wolf deity from Yamato province, it also was seen associated with frost, as it was meant to protect people from fires. So again, this devil fruit was pretty much just based off that Japanese mythology, because Yamato's main power outside of transforming into a wolf, which by the way is a carnivorous Zoan fruit. Carnivorous Zoan fruits, it basically increase your bloodlust and thirstiness. So if you're naturally a bloodthirsty person like Rob Lucci, you eat a carnivorous Zoan, it's going to make you even way more of an asshole, all right? So let's just deal with that. But the main fruit's power is that it obviously increases your strength, speed, and durability like all Zoan fruits, but it also gives you the control over ice-based attacks. Now, obviously, not ice-based attack on Kizaru's level with his ice fruit, but this obviously is like the mythical ice, all right? It's magic ice, essentially, all right? So Yamato has a few ways in which the devil fruit gets used. The first thing is the blast breath attack called Namuji Hyoga, which essentially is basically a ice version of Kaido's bolt of breath. They fought each other and on the top of the skull dome, and both of their fruits were able to clash just evenly and cancel each other out. All right. And so the next technique we see Yamato use is a technique called Kageyami. Think of it as like Gaara's, again, Naruto reference, sorry, that's what I think of. Think of it as like an ice skin that Yamato wears to protect himself when he's fighting Kaido, and anytime, damage occurs, it goes directly to that ice skin, and that way if anything breaks off, it's not actually real damage. This was useful during the Thunder Bagua clash with Conqueror's Haki, where Yamato is basically able to shield themselves against Kaido's onslaught and only take, some minor head injury. Obviously, we just scratched that off outside on One Piece. And on top of that, you also have other techniques which Yamato can use in his human form, where he's able to basically instantly take a frosty aura called Maharaba, and basically is able to freeze anything in an area. Think of it like Kanjuro's Kanzembo, Fiery Spirit, and stop the explosions that were happening in the armor room on top of Onigashima, preventing basically the bomb going off and detonating and killing the Fire Capital, all right? This stuff is very powerful. Obviously, Yamato was able to go toe-to-toe with Kaido for a little bit, and honestly lasts a lot better than anybody outside of Luffy in a 1v1, all right? And obviously, because Yamato has Conqueror's Haki, Armament, and all the other types of Haki, is better suited to fight than anybody else outside of Luffy. But the fact that this fruit was able to go toe-to-toe with Kaido's fruit and hold its own for a while means it's ridiculously powerful, all right? Next up, we have the second confirmed mythical zone fruit we've seen in this series is the Hita Hitanomi Mado Dai Butsu. This was eaten by Sengoku. And obviously, okay, we haven't seen Sengoku use this fruit outside of like Marineford, and we've only seen it being referenced like in video games, stuff like that. But the Hita Hitanomi Mado Daibutsu is probably one of the more powerful obviously devil fruits in general, because Sengoku was the fleet admiral for decades, and obviously he knows Conqueror's Haki, armament, observation, all of that. But this devil fruit's main power is the fact that he was able to take shockwaves and negate them from the Guragoronomi, all right? The Guragoronomi is the strongest paramecia, right? It has the potential to destroy the entire world. And obviously Teach, who had just gotten the power from Whitebeard after he died, isn't nearly as skilled or as powerful as Whitebeard was, but the fact that this fruit is able to create shockwaves where you're able to just take them and negate them from Whitebeard, the Guragoronomi, all right, straight up means this fruit is an absolute unit, all right? It can do massive damage, all right? And so yeah, this basically turns into a golden Buddha. All right, and again, if you know anything about Japanese, anything about Japanese culture and how much Buddhism is very important to them, and so who the Buddha is basically an enlightened being who obtained enlightenment. And so that's all I'm going to say. I'm no expert on Buddhism, please don't crucify me on that. I'm no expert. But when it comes to the Buddha powers, essentially you have a Buddha shockwave, and that's all we've seen so far. But the fact that it is able to go toe-to-toe with shockwaves from the Guragoronomi, again, strongest paramecia, can create earthquakes, tsunamis, all of that, and it can negate shockwaves from those with its own. That leads me to believe this fruit is ridiculously powerful, and you turn into a golden Buddha, I'm going to assume your defenses are just like, probably in terms of just raw defense, second only to Kaido's Azure Dragon Fruit, so we'll see on that one. Alright, next up we have the Toritarinomi model Phoenix, alright? or bird fruit model phoenix. All right, this was eaten by Marco, and this fruit, listen, this is probably one of the more reasons why I would have had to nerf this fruit, because this fruit's primarily focused on defense and healing. Because if it had any offensive capabilities, this fruit would absolutely be totally broken. It wouldn't even be close. All right. So if you don't know anything about mythology, phoenixes are basically immortal birds that when they die, they rise from their ashes anew. And so what this fruit does essentially gives you the same ability. All right. You can turn into a blue phoenix. All right. Now, if don't know anything about that, it basically gives Marco the ability to instantly regenerate from any kind of attack. All right, doesn't matter if it's guns, cannons, swords, hockey infused attacks, it doesn't matter. Marco can regenerate from it. Now, this is the caveat with Marco's powers. He can still feel pain. Like if I shoot Marco with a bunch of guns in the head and his body, he's gonna feel it. Now he's gonna regenerate and he can just overcome it pretty quickly. All right, but the fact that this fruit lets you regenerate from almost any attack, essentially. I'm trying to think if there's any weaknesses outside of the standard devil fruit, seawater, or just hockey-based attacks. Maybe if you're using strong conquerors, hockey, and view attacks, you can slow down the regeneration. But the fact that this is the only weakness is the user's stamina, it's kind of broken. Again, you don't really have any weaknesses with this fruit outside the fact that A, it's defense and healing. So Marco's flames, his blue flames, they can only heal. They can't burn anything. If Marco could actually burn things in the story, he would have not lost to Kizaru. He didn't lose. He got cheap shot out of that fight, but Marineford would have ended a lot differently. All right. Secondly, all right, he would have beaten King and Queen because Marco was fighting them both in a 2v1 at the same time, going on the defensive, basically fighting them and healing everybody behind him who were affected by Queen's Ice Oni virus. So again, ridiculously powerful fruit on that area, and it just utterly broken in the wrong hands. Again, Marco was a chill guy. He was like the doctor on the Whitebeard crew. He's the best guy. We all love Marco. And I just love the fact that this fruit looks like a literal pineapple. Like I'm looking at it right now. It's a literal fucking pineapple. And Marco's favorite fruit and his head look like pineapple. So, hey, there it is. That's Marco's fruit. All right. And so this is just basically what the main power of this fruit lets you heal people. You have the flames of revival, meaning you basically can come back from any attack a certain number of times. Obviously, it's limited by the user's stamina. Marco has a technique called Bluebird, which he can use to redirect an opponent's attacks. And he was fighting both King and Queen at the same time. All right, and again, this the technique of what you see. What Marco does is he's able to just to fight it in numerous ways. All right, and again, this fruit ridiculously powerful. Now, Marco's had this fruit for over 30 years. He's very skilled, so obviously he's gonna do a lot better than most people who've gotten their devil fruits. But again, the fact that you can come back from almost any attack and just tank it, all right, and you can regenerate. Obviously, you still feel pain, you still have stamina, you can't do this indefinitely. Shows this fruit is ridiculously overpowered. Okay, now we're getting to the top three. Now, this is gonna be controversial. This is just my opinion on this. Don't crucify me. All right, number three. All right, and this is gonna shock some people. The Hita Hitanomi Maro Nika. Now, just wait, just hold on before you freak out. Okay, this fruit, all right, is powerful. 100%. All right, it was Joy Boy's fruit. Luffy has it right now. They changed the name to try to cover up the history of the Joy Boy to the Gumu Gumu no Mi. But there's a reason why I didn't put this number one, and people are gonna ask me rational. Okay, in order to get the full transformation and the tuned force abilities of this devil fruit, you have to awaken it. Again, awaken it. All the other fruits we've seen so far, you don't have to awaken to get the transformation abilities. Maybe in the case of Killingham, you can do the whole nightmare thing if you're awakened. But from what we've seen, nobody has the ability to manifest, to transform without being awakened. Okay, this is the only one where you have to awaken to get the transformation abilities. Otherwise, your body's just rubber, all right? And there have been other people who have had this fruit, all right? The government has been searching for this fruit for centuries. But every time somebody eats it, it slips out of their hands. And so that gives, the idea of, okay, how hard is this fruit to awaken? Well, only 2 people in 800 years have awakened this fruit, Joy Boy and Luffy. That's it. Nobody's come close. Nobody since then. So that leaves me wondering, okay, why is this fruit number 3 on my list? So if it requires a very strict set of conditions for you to awaken your powers or to reach its full potential fruit, the average person in the One Piece world isn't going to be able to reach that level. most people don't never get devil fruits, and those who actually do, it takes years to awaken and train to get to that level, and some never do. And just so if you're going to get access to the transformation abilities of a Zoan fruit by awakening it, that's going to dig it down for me. And that's going to be important later on when we get to the next one on our list, because it also requires a very certain strict user conditions. Now, obviously, we've seen Luffy throughout this whole story. He basically he has originally, which is rubber, but then at Water 7 in his lobby, he realized, okay, I need stronger techniques. So he developed his gear system. Gear second, essentially, is Luffy basically just blood doping his body. He's basically pumping oxygen into his body, so that increasing his strength and speed. Okay, standard. Gear third is basically him ballooning his body into basically giant size. And at the beginning of when he first used Gear third, it would shrink his body down. When he used it, he'd have to shrink down to the size of like a doll or something for a little bit. There was a cooldown period, and then he would recover his body size back up. But again, Gear second and Gear third, he's blood doping and expanding his body. Gear fourth, he's doing a mix of both, but he's also adding in hockey. That's why you get the red markings and everything. And this is why we don't really see much of Luffy's powers. When we see him transform, we don't really just see much of a change difference. Now, the main thing is what those things do is they kind of show, like when Luffy's transforming, how his body changes, how it's morphing, but that's not the transformation we see with Zoan fruits, all right? We just see his body going through a little bit of change. Gear 5 is where things change. Now, if you are able to awaken the fruit and you do get Gear 5, that's when you get access to the infinite possibilities of the Nika fruit, of Joy Boy's power, of this fruit is basically seen based off the legendary mythical figure Nika, the sun god, a warrior who would free people with laughter on his face, all right? And you would see the doon-da-da-da dance. And throughout it, you'd see Joy Boy and Luffy doing the same dance with their arms sticking out. And this warrior is liberation, all right? It's essentially the limitations of this fruit are bound only by the user's creativity. So if you're like Luffy and you're instinctive and you're crazy and you're not thinking and you're just acting a fool, this fruit is perfect for you. If you're someone who's much more methodical, strategic, you're going to run into some problems because you're not naturally a creative, just impulsive person, all right? And this fruit's powers are truly limited only by your creativity, all right? It's got the Toon Force. I'll never forget the scene in Egghead when Luffy's fighting against the Gorosei, and he takes out a paintbrush out of nowhere, paints number 56, because Gamu no means 5-6 in Japanese. And so Luffy basically takes that, paints a baseball bat after some wood he's chopped off with his own mouth, creates a bat, and then he bats away some attacks right back at the Gorosei, causing explosions. So it's just, to me, it can only be limited by the user's imagination. Obviously, its main weakness is particularly slash attacks. Luffy's always been weak against cutting attacks. You can't really do anything against him. His body's made out of rubber. And so the fact that this fruit is so sought after by so many people, and it's only been awakened by 2 people in close to a millennium, meaning this fruit is ridiculously powerful, okay? Still, it's not the strongest because, again, to get access to the transformation ability, the freedom, you need to awaken it, and you have to have a very free-spirited personality where you're all about chaos and just letting your mind run wild, all right? And you also have to, from what I've understood, you need to have all 3 types of hockey maxed out. If you don't, you're probably not going to awaken this fruit. So this is why, the number of people who have Conqueror's hockey, I think in the story was like 1 in a million is the stat. And even being able to do the advanced applications we've seen, it's even harder. So everything we've seen in this story essentially is like, yeah, this is a powerful fruit, but it requires a very specific person to use, all right? All right, speaking on that, we have second to last entry on this list. We have the Ryonomi model Needhogger, all right? The Needhog fruit, all right? Now, those of you who don't know what a Needhog is, in Norse mythology, the Needhog is essentially sitting at the bottom of the world tree where you have all the 9 realms, connecting the world tree, the Yggdrasil tree. You've got Elfheim, Vanaheim, Midgard, Asgard, all that. It is sitting at the bottom of the world tree. And in Norse mythology, the Needhog is essentially making sure that the roots and the tree branches don't get out of hand. It's keeping the bottom of the tree nice and orderly. And Ratatoskr, the squirrel, is the one maintaining the top of the tree, the branches, making sure that no overgrowth happens at the top. So think of Needhog and Ratatoskr essentially as duality, all right? One's clearing out the dead, one's making sure life at the top is growing correctly, which is kind of fitting for the fact that Ratatoskr, who is not on this list, by the way, again, we don't know what Ratatoskr's powers are, but it seems like to be a 2-for-1 package with the Needhog fruit. So we're just going to keep them together for the sake of simplicity. So this fruit was a treasure of Elbaf. We don't know how long it's been there. Well, actually, we can guess. It's been there for 800 years. And it was being guarded by Ragnir, all right? The squirrel that could turn to Ratatoskr, the ice squirrel. And nobody in Elbaf dared to touch this fruit. Kings have come. No one's bothered to touch it because Ragnir had not deemed them worthy. Again, similar logic applies to the Nika fruit. If it has to require a specific circumstance to awaken this power, I am not going to give it a higher fruit rating because, again, other people can eat this fruit, but they will not get access to the full capabilities, all right? So this is why I'm going to get second to last, number 2 on my list, all right? All right, because this fruit requires a specific set of persons to actually be chosen and wielded. Now that we've established that, what the Needhog fruit is, essentially you turn it into a giant black dragon. Now, if a normal person eats it, they turn into a giant black dragon like the size we saw at Punk Hazard. If a giant eats it, they turn into a bigger dragon. If an ancient giant, like Loki, turns into the biggest dragon in the world, basically the size of a small island. And from what we've seen in this fruit, it honestly, it just turns into a massive 4-legged black dragon. And for a small difference between dragons in Eastern and Western mythology. In Eastern mythology, Japanese and Chinese, dragons are seen as guardian spirits, or they're protectors. They're meant to bring in rain, good fortune, protect treasure. In Western mythology, like in obviously like Norse mythology or even biblical times, dragons are seen as harbingers of death and destruction, all right? And so this basically is why the Needhog fruit is seen as this massive black dragon, the apocalyptic dragon that basically is like the trigger point for like the end of times, all right? And from what we've seen in Loki's size, he's basically the size of a sea king, which, yeah, I know this One Piece can be different with scaling, but again, this fruit can turn you into a big black dragon. If you are an ancient giant and Ragnar chooses you, you can turn into the biggest dragon in the world. It basically dwarfs Kaido's size by a mile, right? But again, this requires very specific circumstances for someone to actually get, so we're just gonna throw that on the side for now, all right? And this fruit was a treasure for Elbaf, all right? People have been touching this fruit, all right? Rox wanted Harold to have it, so for his plans, he wanted Harold to have the Needhog fruit. And Emu also was looking for this fruit. And it's always funny because Emu was sitting back like, are you telling me a country with Vikings, Norse mythology, has the Needhog fruit? Absurd. There's no way. There were no signs. Now, granted, I know this is our world. Emu doesn't know about things like the freaking obviously Norse mythology and stuff like that, but it just makes me laugh that we know that Emu was searching for this fruit, and he's just like, oh wait, it was on Elbaf the whole time? You're telling me a country about Vikings and Norse mythology, the Needhog fruit was there? I'm like, yeah, it's just, yeah, where else would it be? Sure shit ain't Wano, I'll tell you that. So then we have that fruit, and so obviously you turn into a big dragon, and this fruit is extremely powerful. The fact that Loki, combined with Ragnar's ice powers, was able to basically just take out the imaginary dream warrior, and basically just turn the tide of Elbaf, at least initially anyway, and basically just take out everything with just relative ease with its thunder breath and just absolutely crush anything. And you can shoot out, again, lightning breaths. And from what we've seen, it's basically the same kind of lightning energy that you'd see somebody like Anaru's Goro no Mi fire, just blasting out of its mouth and just laying waste to anything, all right? Obviously, if you're Luffy and you're rubber, that shit doesn't affect you at all. You're just like, I'm rubber. It doesn't matter, okay? But this fruit is extremely powerful. And again, you gain access to Ragnar's ice powers, the magic hammer, and you can control and you can shoot out lightning-based attacks and just level anything that gets in your way. This fruit is ridiculously powerful. But it's still number 2 on our list. It is Kaido's Uo no Mi model Sari, or the Fish Fruit model dragon. Now, I remember when Kaido first came out, we were like, oh, Kaido's dragon fruit. Is it red? Is it black? It's blue. And this gets back to other mythology, like the four zodiacs in Japanese myth and Asian mythology. The blue dragon is one of the four zodiacs. It's seen as this guardian protector that essentially his job is to protect the dragon of the west, and that's why the tiger of the east, the dragon and tigers don't necessarily get along with each other. And so yeah, just take that from what you will. And so also, this is also based off the fact that it's a fish fruit. The Japanese mythology of a carp flying up, swinging up top of a waterfall, and because it was so diligent, hardworking, and the heavens rewarded it by turning it into a dragon. So if you ever wonder why Magikarp turns into Gyarados, there you go, now you know. So again, this fruit is, in my opinion, the strongest Zoan fruit, strongest mythical Zoan. Okay, now why? Because unlike the other entries we've seen, where they have a unique ability and also or primarily focus on offense or defense, or in the case of Luffy and Loki's, require very strict conditions to be met to get the full potential out of this fruit. This fruit, by all accounts, you gain access to the dragon powers pretty quickly. Like you saw it God Valley flashback where Kaido, by the way, side note, Kaido being such a rat, a punk, he did Big Mom so dirty. I always remember that scene where Kaido just snuck up on her and just bashed her head in and just ate that fruit, munched on it. And here's the thing about Kaido, okay? Devil fruits canonically taste like shit. They taste like shit. People eat devil fruit, they just like say, ass. They don't like it. They taste like shit. Kaido was smiling, cheesy, like, this is good devil fruit, Big Lin, thank you. And he was just having the time of his life, all right? And I just find that hilarious. And when he first got the power at God Valley, we see him fighting, and you see the epic double page of Roger, Whitebeard, Rocks, Garp, Big Mom, everybody lining up with their cool attack names. And Kaido was just like, okay, think, cool attack name, cool attack name. What do I do? Okay, dragon. And he just shoots dragon, and it would become borrow breath as the series went on. But yeah, he just didn't have a cool attack name, which, in fairness, if you turn into a dragon and you had powers, you wouldn't know what to call your attacks. But we see that fruit being eaten by Kaido, and we see him being able to use the bowl of breath right away. Now, obviously, he gets taken out by Rocks after the whole Dummy Reverse incident, but this fruit, pretty much, you get access to all the powers right away. And obviously, with Momo's case, with the artificial zone, it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but still, you get access to all the powers pretty quickly. Now, the one thing I would say about this fruit, all right, it has the perfect blend of offense and defense. Why? With those dragon scales, it is pretty much, unless you have advanced levels of Haki and Conqueror's Haki and just legendary blades, you are not going to be able to cut through those scales, okay? Obviously, Odin could, Zoro could. And if you're people like Killer and Law, you have to basically bypass the scales to damage his body internally. If you're Luffy, use advanced Haki to basically attack his internal body directly. So you have that going for you. So, this fruit, you get pretty much all the advantages. And its main advantage, you can control the weather. In Japanese and Asian mythology, dragons can control the weather. They're seen as harbingers of rain. If you've ever seen the movie Ride the Last Dragons, dragons in Asian mythology can bring rain and good fortune. Kaido can create wind slash attacks out of his mouth. He can do Tatsumaki dragon twisters. I'll never forget that scene when he's fighting Zoro, and Zoro has his technique, Tatsumaki dragon twister. And Kaido's offended, like, wait, hold on, are you challenging me to a dragon twister fight? Oh, no, it's on. So he basically charges up, twists his body into a snake, and he just fires off a bunch of twisters, all right? He can shoot lightning breaths, and Kaido's strongest attack, by far we've seen, is called Kaien Daiko, or Fire Great Dragon, okay? So Kaido basically turns his body into flames, and he essentially turns into a sort of magma dragon, and he basically can melt through anything. And again, if you're not someone with advanced levels of Haki, forget even being able to injure him. You won't even be able to touch him in this form, all right? So again, just keep that in mind. This is the strongest Zoan fruit in my opinion, all right? Not strongest Zoan fruit, strongest Zoan fruit, strongest mythical Zoan fruit. You basically have access to all the powers right away. you can basically essentially fly, control the weather, create blasts that blow up mountains, and you can control other elements from rain, lightning, wind, and you have almost 9 impenetrable defense, where the only thing that can get through you are either specialized attacks like Law and Killers or advanced Hakis, users like Zora, Odin, and Luffy. Again, this power fruit is ridiculously powerful, and again, Kaido basically used it to basically strong arm all of Wano for 20 years, which is funny to me because Kaido, at the end of his life, well, not the end of his life, he's probably still alive, sitting in a volcano, he was telling Luffy, hey, just because you have a strong Devil Fruit, don't mean you can win shit, alright? Alright? Roger didn't have a Devil Fruit. Look what he accomplished, alright? He even remembers Odin. Odin basically pushed me to my limits. He didn't have a Devil Fruit. But then when Kaido was like, in his, 18, 19 years old, 40 years ago at God Valley, he was telling Lillian, he's like, big mom, Lillian, big sis, you're gonna hook me up, right? You're gonna give me Devil Fruit, right? You promise, right? You'll give me a Devil Fruit. But then, as he got older, he just became more depressed and realized, wait, having a strong Devil Fruit doesn't mean jack shit. I need Haki. So, yeah, but again, strongest mythical zone user, strongest zone fruit, Kaido's Ua Unui Model Seiryu. And hey, good news for Momo. I mean, in a few years, when you get that fruit under control, because with Momo, it's an artificial zone, so there's a bit of a learning curve. Also, Momo's 8, and so it's going to grow with him naturally. He can control things Kaido can. So, yeah, that's it. 12 strongest mythical zone fruits we've seen. Again, I'm not counting the Gorosei for obvious reasons, because what we've seen with Emu, we don't know if they're Devil Fruits or abilities given to them. And I'm also putting Ragnir in with Loki's because the Ragnir Rototasker is a package deal with the Needhawk fruit. So again, we just lump those two together. And the fact that, yeah, those fruits are just linked together, we won't ever see those apart. So again, those are 12 strongest mythical zone fruits. This is Malik. Everybody, signing off. Have a wonderful night. God bless you all.